A summer morning off the coast of Sicily. A Roman war fleet is at sea, and the order to attack has not been given. One thing has to happen first. Somebody has to feed the chickens. Not the crew, the chickens. Rome carried sacred chickens with its armies. If the birds ate, the army could fight. If the birds refused, the army waited. So why did the Roman army need permission from a bird? This is not a story about people who believed silly things. The officials who ran this system knew the answer could be arranged. They said so, in writing. Then they kept the system for more than 200 years. The birds traveled with the army in a cage. They had a keeper. His title was Polybius, and the word simply means the chicken man. This was a paid position in the Roman state. Before a battle, the keeper opened the cage and threw food on the ground. Then everybody watched how the birds ate. The test was not whether they ate. The test was whether they ate badly. Food had to fall out of the beak and hit the ground. That falling crumb was the sign from the gods. Signs taken this way had a name. The Romans called them the auspices. There was also a list of ways for the birds to fail. If they would not leave the cage, that was bad. If they came out slowly, that was bad. If they refused the food, that was bad. And if they ate politely, that was also bad. That was the whole test. A system like this has an obvious weakness, and the Romans knew about it. Cicero was a Roman politician, and also an augur. That was an official whose job was reading signs from the gods. He wrote a book about those signs, built as a debate with his brother Quintus. Quintus argues for the birds. And in the middle of defending them, Quintus admits that Roman officials use auspices that are coacta, forced. The man arguing in favor is the one who tells you the answers are forced. Cicero then explains the method, and the method is very simple. You keep the birds in a cage. You keep them hungry. You give them soft food instead of hard grain. A starving bird lands on soft food and drops some of it. It always drops some of it. The gods agreed with whoever was holding the food. Cicero also quotes an old rule from his own college of augurs. Any bird can give this sign. Any bird that is free. So the cage was not the tradition. The cage was the improvement. Now back to that fleet off Sicily. The year is 249 before Christ. Rome and Carthage are at war, and Rome has a consul in command at sea. His name is Publius Claudius Pulcher, and he is the son of one of the most famous men in Rome. He wants to attack the Carthaginian fleet at Drepana on the west coast of Sicily, so the keeper opens the cage. What happens next is the most famous thing a Roman ever said about a chicken. Cicero tells it, and Suetonius tells it again a century later. The birds will not eat. Claudius Pulcher looks at the cage. Then he has the birds thrown into the sea. If they will not eat, let them drink. Then he attacks. It goes badly from the first minute. His ships are pushed against the shore with no room to turn. Pulcher escapes with 30 ships. 93 are captured. 93 ships, with their crews on board. Nobody asked those men about the chickens. Afterwards, Rome prosecuted him. Polybius says he was heavily fined. Cicero says the people condemned him. Then, the Senate ordered Pulcher to name a dictator for Rome. He named his own office messenger. But this is where the chicken story gets strange. Our closest source is the Greek historian Polybius. He wrote about a century later, using information from Romans. Polybius describes the whole campaign and the whole battle. He never mentions a bird. No chickens, no cage, no sign of any kind. He says Pulcher was blamed at Rome for acting without caution or calculation. The two men who give us the chickens are Cicero and Suetonius. Cicero tells it inside an argument that the gods deserve respect. Suetonius tells it inside a list of arrogant things one family did. Neither Cicero nor Suetonius is writing a report on the battle. Both are using the story to prove something. So the chickens may not be evidence about what happened at Drepana. They may be evidence about what Rome wanted the defeat to mean. A disaster with a cause is easier to carry than a disaster without one. And the Romans had already shown that the birds were not really the point. 44 years earlier, at a town called Aquilonia, a Roman army was waiting to attack. The consul in command was Polybius. He sent the keeper to take the auspices. The chickens refused to eat. The keeper told the consul they had eaten greedily. He lied. The whole camp wanted the battle, and he gave the camp the answer it wanted. Then the keepers started arguing among themselves. Some horsemen heard them. The news reached the consul's nephew, and the nephew went to the consul. Polybius did not stop the battle. He ruled that a man who reports a false sign takes the punishment himself, and that the sign as reported still counted for the army. Then he ordered the chicken keepers to stand in the front line. Before the fighting started, a thrown spear killed the man who had lied. Polybius said the gods were present, and the guilty man had been punished. So the sign was never the bird. The sign was the report. The system did not run on what the chickens did. It ran on what somebody said the chickens did. By the time Cicero was writing, the chickens had quietly left the battlefields. Rome's wars were being commanded by proconsuls, men whose year as consul was already finished, and they had no right to take the auspices at all. So no chickens were consulted. Rivers were crossed without asking anybody. Then there is Marcellus, 5 times consul, and an augur himself, one of the officials who read the signs. Marcellus stopped taking the military auspices completely. And when he had something to do, he traveled in a covered chair with the curtains shut, so that no sign could reach him and stop him. Which brings us back to Cicero, who spent an entire book proving that the auspices of his own day were empty. His words, "What we use now are the ghosts of auspices, in no way auspices." And then Cicero wrote that the law of the augurs should be kept anyway. It began, he says, in a belief about reading the future. It was kept afterwards for the sake of the Republic. Put all of that together, and the chickens start to look different. Whatever the ritual had once meant, by Cicero's time, it was doing a different job. It gave Rome a legal way to tell a consul with an army, not today. A brake that the driver can release is not a brake. Which is why Claudius Pulcher did not break the system when he threw the birds into the sea. He proved that it had already stopped working. Rome lost a fleet that day. The only ones aboard who wanted to wait went into the water first.